the one who will bring balance to the force. You believe it's this or... At last we will have revenge. You feel it. The dark side. Like the man. All of them. Rated PG.
Hello there, and welcome to the King Street Cinema podcast. My name's Andy, and I'm joined as ever by James from King Street Cinema. How are you?
I'm okay.
You're okay?
I'm okay.
Yeah, excited to be talking about the Phantom Menace.
Yes.
Star Wars Episode 1, which will be shown at King Street on the 4th and 5th.
That sounds right.
Sounds right.
I haven't got it written up right now, but I'm sure that's right.
It's obviously, we'll keep saying check the website.
Yeah. For listening.
25th anniversary.
That's the idea. That's what I hear.
It's Friday the 3rd and Saturday the 4th.
Oh, there we go. 3rd and 4th.
Yeah. This movie was huge when it came out, for those of us who remember.
Yes.
Probably the most anticipated movie of my lifetime up until that point.
Ooh.
Not for me, but in general.
Oh, you know what that might be? That's probably true, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'll set the scene for you. We're both 42.
Yeah.
So when that movie came out, we'd have been late teens.
I was 17, I think.
17.
You might have been 18. You're a little older than me.
Yeah, I think I was 17 because I was born in November.
Did it come out in the summertime? It would have been the summer, so I think I probably just turned 17 myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely that. I remember, what I was up to at that point in my life, and I remember going to see the film.
Yeah.
Really well. I remember going to see the film because not only seeing that movie particularly, obviously, that we're going to be talking about, but also 2 years previous, they'd re-released the original trilogy, which I went to see all three at the cinema. First time ever seeing any of them at the cinema. So, and that was great, even with the changes, which aren't so great that they made, because that was it. That was the day we all go to the cinema and go, oh, hang on, they've changed bits.
Yeah.
And some of it okay, some of it not so okay. But it was still great to see them at the cinema.
Yeah.
So
that got us all in the mood.
That's what I was about to say. Right. So that was like, whoa, yeah. Star Wars is back. Yeah. New film coming out. Everyone's going to go see it. Much anticipated, like you say. You're probably right. Probably the biggest, hottest. Yeah. I don't know, what resurgence you're going to say?
Yeah. I mean, we'd had Star Wars franchise all our lives. I mean, when Return of the Jedi was 82, was it?
81, I believe.
Okay, so basically all our lives.
No, sorry, 80. No, hang on, 83. Yes, 83.
83, okay.
The last one was 83.
Okay, because it was 77.
83
years apart, not 2 years.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so we were too young to see these movies in the cinema.
Absolutely, yeah.
But we'd grown up with them. The only things we'd really had were the animated droids and Ewoks.
Yeah, I remember droids. Yeah, that was good.
And so there was this big film that we had literally waited all our lives for. So anticipation was high. In 1999, it was around... Summer blockbusters were a big thing. Yeah. I think this may have came out... I don't know. In my mind, it came out early summer, if not Easter.
That may be true.
But I might be confusing it just because now it's always May the 4th, Star Wars Day.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I like I say, I personally can't remember. I'm sure I did see it. I would have thought in the summer.
Yeah.
But if it came out a little earlier, it very well might have.
It would have played all summer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think I was there for opening. I was really looking forward to it, but more so in a sort of. Yeah, I'm not needing to go there straight away, like opening night or anything.
I remember queuing.
Right.
But this would be before internet booking.
Well, I remember queuing for many films in those days. In the 90s, you queued for especially the summer blockbusters. Yeah. Like, I remember a few years previous, like Independence Day. That was insane. Yeah. So stuff like that. There was a lot of queuing. So it's something that people don't experience so much now.
Shall I sidetrack on a queuing story from the 90s? 12 years old, maybe 11, queuing for Forrest Gump.
Oh, yeah.
And the queue was massive. And we got to the end of the queue, me and my mate, and it had just sold out.
Yeah.
And the bloke serving was like, Well, Speed's on. That's good. Do you want to see Speed?
Yeah.
We were 11 or 12.
Yeah.
And we were like, yeah. And my mate I was with for years after, Speed was his favourite film ever. And I think just because it was a 15. And
well, it's a great movie. Speed.
It's great. Yeah, we watched it recently, and then the 90s classic.
Absolutely.
But it's strange. This movie, I don't know, 25 years old, it feels to me newer, but yet so much has happened with Star Wars since.
I can remember.
It almost feels...
Yeah, I can understand that thinking, because I remember very clearly watching it thinking, wow, this looks really new. There weren't many movies that looked as clear. It's so typical now of every type of film that's like this now, that everything looks so crisp and clean and almost like a computer, like a modern computer game.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd seen a film like that up to that point. I don't think I'd seen a film shot that looked to me so much like just CGI, everything looking CGI. You got to think it's before the movies, like when we get into the early 2000s of things like Lord of the Rings, you're seeing so much CGI around, everything's looking crazy, like futuristic or whatever, however you want to describe it, or unrealistic if you like. I mean, to the point of it's just, now we can see monsters in ways that we couldn't before when everything was practical effects. And even if I prefer that, even if they do look ropey, I just like the use of people's time, the amount that it takes to effort it takes to, I'm not saying it doesn't take effort to create something on a computer, but it's a different kind of thing.
I mean, and also if it's physically there, it to me it just looks more real. If CGI is done badly, it can look Roger Rabbit. And I think you mentioned the reissues of the older ones, because he added CGI and stuff. That kind of eased us in to how this film was going to be.
Sure. Well, we've seen a fair bit of CGI.
Yeah, but I mean in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. But in general in cinema, there had been a bit, but there'd been I can't think of a film that was so much so.
No, I mean it was getting there, but this was. I mean, pretty much all of it's green screen, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, as far as I'm aware, I don't. I remember thinking, even though I enjoy, and I did. I want to make this clear that I did enjoy the film. Yeah. But I remember thinking this doesn't feel like Star Wars to me. Yeah.
It's important to a lot of people I think weren't ready for a prequel. There was that anticipation for something set afterwards because we'd all loved these characters like all our lives, like I say. And the look of it, you've got to think it's pre. Yeah. It's almost like post-apocalyptic in the original trilogy.
Absolutely.
Everything's been destroyed and battered. So I think that's deliberate that everything looks.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like my brain way of thinking was, even though everything looks right, this is supposed to be the past from where we were at the end of the trilogy. Even though everything looks really clean and nice, your brain's going, should that be? And then I'd go, well, yeah, of course, because it's like you say, it's like this is what it was like, and then it all got destroyed, and there you go. I mean that works, I think. Enough. I never thought that's bad about it. Like, oh, everything looks so beautiful. That's a bad thing. It did make me think, like I said. It made it hard for me to really feel like this was the Star Wars. Even though all the pieces are there, you got the Jedis, you got the music, you got the dark side and everything. You got the characters that are all speaking in the ways that you'd expect them to. Because I think a lot of people really were bad, really disliked this movie for a lot of the wrong reasons.
I think they just it wasn't what they were expected. But it's the same with the more recent trilogy. People have got in their heads what they personally think it should be, and I don't mean that in a nasty way, but you can't help it. And therefore the sequel throws them a bit, and they don't see it for what it is. All they're thinking is, this isn't what I wanted.
But that's such a strange way. For me personally, I think it's a really strange way of thinking, because surely people maybe people aren't really movie fans. You see, maybe they're not really into film, as in in a generational kind of sense, in a historic kind of sense, because they're not going to be like the movies from the 80s and the 70s, because those were movies in the 80s and the 70s. Then it's going to fit with the mold of how people experience the world around them now. I mean, art is only a reflection of life ultimately. So even if it is fantasy, it's holding up to a standard of now. Right. So I've never understood that really as a criticism of itself. I understand why you may prefer the older, because I mean, I personally do, right? I prefer the older ones because aesthetically and stuff, I just prefer the way it looks. But to complain about it because it's not like the old thing, because it doesn't, because it's not exactly like how it was in the olden days, that's a silly argument.
I mean, and I feel as well that when Force Awakens came out years later, which was very like A New Hope, which is what everyone was, not everyone, but what people were asking for. When they did do that, that was criticised as well.
Absolutely.
So I kind of admire George Lucas for doing what he wanted to do.
I like that. Seriously, the prequel trilogy that he made, I think is a fine trilogy of movies. Like I said before, when I went to see it originally, it just didn't feel like Star Wars to me. But that's, again, because I'm thinking my head's in the old, in the past. And I think it's fine that it's not like, and like I say, I think it's fine that this prequel trilogy, doesn't feel like the original ones. Like I have to think of it put your head in a different space for it, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's fine.
Also, one thing I like about this trilogy, I mean, it when I saw I saw all of them in cinema, some more than once. It was usually the second watch that I really enjoyed it, because it was just that big thing. You're hyped up and you're like this. And every time that the Star Wars at the beginning would come up, it was like, oh, this is, that's
the nostalgia thing. Always the beginning would always, obviously, with the credits, not the credits, but the scroll of the what's happened and what's coming up, this sort of thing. That's always remind you of being a kid. Remind you of seeing Star Wars perhaps for the first time ever. And that's great. That's a good. You should have that feeling. The feeling like that's what you're here for. But it doesn't have to be. Therefore, the story carries on. I mean, if you think of the original trilogy, they're not all the same movie. They're all quite different films,
and they even had different directors, which shows
exactly.
Whereas all the prequels were George Lucas.
They were,
and I believe Phantom Menace was the first film he directed since Star Wars, since A New Hope.
That might be true. I'm not sure.
I think so, because he done a lot of producing and writing.
You might be right on that.
And he came back. He didn't have to direct them.
No.
And I think they were personal for him. And we forget as well. We said we're early 40s. There's a generation out there who mid 20s, early 30s, who love these films. A lot of people like them more than the original, because that's what they saw. That's what they grew up with.
Yeah, they grew up watching those, I suppose.
A good friend of mine who was 30 now, her favourite one is Phantom Menace, loves Darth Maul, isn't really interested in the old ones.
Darth Maul's a good character.
Darth Maul's, I mean, that was another thing that was criticised. This character was, there's toys, posters, everything, and wasn't in that much of the movie. But I like that. That makes it's like Boba Fett, when Boba Fett was in.
Oh yeah, I mean, if people want to talk about characters that are basically not in a film that people started to freak out about, Boba Fett is the ultimate one. He appears very briefly in the second Star Wars film. He's not even mentioned by name. Hasn't even got. I don't believe he actually might not even
second or third.
No, he's in thingy, Empire Strikes Back.
Is he? Okay, yeah.
Because he's the bounty hunter that takes Frozen Han.
Oh, of course, is he not in Jedi as well?
He is in Jedi as well, but this is the first time you see him. So I wasn't there, obviously, at the time in 1980. I wasn't even born, let alone old enough to see the film. But from my research into this, people went crazy for this character.
Yeah.
They absolutely love this character, needed toys, needed things, and he hasn't even got a name.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's great. I like that. But that's the thing, and it's the mystique of the character.
Exactly.
It's great. I like a lot of the characters of Phantom Menace. There was, I forget the name, but Brian Blessed played the big toad type creature. Do you know who?
Yes. Just reminding.
Cool. And then there's the controversial Jar Jar Binks, which.
There's two controversial characters. Jar Jar Binks is certainly the main one that people obviously remember and talk about the most as a controversial character people just dislike because for whatever reason, his annoying voice. It is annoying, but that's fine.
Yeah.
It's not the worst thing in the world. There's been many worse characters than Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are elements of Jar Jar Binks which, again, questionable. And there's also another character whose name I can't remember, but is the guy who runs the... he flies.
Oh yeah.
He flies,
He's got a weird voice as well.
A bit of a weird voice. The guy, who's got the boy Anakin.
Yeah.
And his mother, of course. And he's kind of, again, questionable, like, what is it? It's kind of, a bit stereotypical. So there's those elements to it that I know annoyed people at the time and have annoyed people since, and probably even more so, sort of the racial stereotypes.
Which, I mean, you still, this is 25 years ago. I'm not saying it was right then, because it was mentioned then.
Yeah.
But
absolutely,
a lot's changed in 25 years.
Indeed.
So I don't think there's any malice in any of it. And it was just...
No, not at all.
I hate the phrase, but of its time.
Yeah. And Jar Jar Binks had that as well.
But could I... Yeah. I kind of like Jar Jar Binks because of I like a comedy sidekick.
Yes.
Maybe he was a bit too much and he was made to sell toys. But I think... Yeah, it was too much. If they'd cut back on him a bit, I think he'd be remembered more fondly.
Yes.
But there was a lot of hate, and hence the next two, he's barely in them.
Yes. And I mean, maybe that's the reason.
I think it is.
Do you think it is? I think it is. Because I haven't looked into it whether he.
I don't think they'd admit that was the reason.
Yeah.
But I think it is because he was the new character to sell things.
Yeah.
I mean, Darth Maul kind of was, but they spoilers. He's not going to be in the next one.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean that's just my theory.
And that might be right. I mean, the rest of the story is told not from his perspective. They've put him as an ambassador at the end of the first one.
Yeah.
And so he's become his role as far as what's going on, what we're witnessing, is sort of he's not a part of that.
No, but I think they'd give him some comedy scenes or something.
Yeah, right. So more, little bits here and there, but not necessarily so up front. Maybe.
I think it might have been built to we'd look forward to seeing the little bits he was in.
Yeah.
But then it didn't.
Yeah,
there was a lot of hate at the time.
There was. I mean, it was crazy the amount, and I think we should mention that in a sort of retrospective sense because I'd never experienced up to that point that kind of thing, which would become a common thing to this day, which we see all the time. People hating on something for very little reason other than they just don't personally like it, therefore hate it.
Yeah. Prime example recently, or a few years ago, is when they released the images of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Right.
And it actually got changed. It's just people,
But everything. You just think about Ghostbusters coming, but not the ones now. People like those ones a little bit, but like when the Ghostbusters came back in 2016, and in new Indiana Joneses, all these things like just people just freaking out to over excess. I mean, sure, you may not like I understand not liking a thing, but going crazy about it, getting such anger and hatred doesn't make sense. And it was the first time. The Phantom Menace was the first time I ever noticed that.
Do you think this is because of the internet?
Sure.
It's easier to do
Absolutely.
that? Absolutely.
Internet was just on its way up with becoming a thing, which on more mass. It'd been around for a few years previous, obviously, but at the end of turn of the millennium, that's when it's beginning to really start kicking off.
I mean, if you can remember, in 1988, we were very young. But I remember when they announced Michael Keaton playing Batman, there was a bit of uproar and people were writing letters and stuff.
Yeah.
If the internet was around then, I don't think he... well, I don't know, but he might not have played him.
Sure.
Because it was quite...
Yeah. You probably not.
Yeah, and
then... It was today,
And to be honest, thank God he did.
Yeah, because
those films...
I mean, things like points of view obviously exist. I remember people... It's hearing about people writing into the BBC.
Why?
Yeah. Something like that. But the kind of just nonsensical hatred en masse.
But I think overall, criticism aside, people were fairly happy with Phantom Menace. I mean, the people who didn't like it were very vocal.
Kids loved it, absolutely loved it. And obviously that is truly its prime target audience, our children or young.
Yeah, and it was very successful.
It was.
And the reviews weren't bad. They were kind of average. They sort of got a lot of 3-star, 4-star reviews. Not the 5s necessarily, but I think it was one of those critics kind of got it, I think, and it is. I think this is set in the path of the next two films. And to be honest, it wasn't overly long, especially by today's standards. It was about 2 hours 20 or something, which is not short, but it's...
I remember at the time feeling like it was long, which meant that a lot of films at that point weren't at that
you mentioned Independence Day. Films like that were probably about 2 hours.
Yeah.
This was a little bit more, but today this film would probably be half an hour longer.
Without question, yeah.
Yeah, and it's one that I last rewatched it whenever the Blu-ray came out. It's probably about 10 years ago. I remember it flying by when I watched it.
Yeah, it's a really easy watch. I mean, it is. Even like I say, even at the time, I'm just thinking it was long. I didn't feel like it was annoyingly long.
No,
I was just like, oh wow, this is.
But I think back then we weren't used to films.
That's
that long.
That's my point. Is that we're just not used to these kind of movies being at that length. In fact, most movies weren't.
Yeah.
Like I say, about the 152 hour mark is generally what this sort of film would be at.
Yeah. Just looking at the cast, because we haven't mentioned that yet. I mean, obviously, Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson.
Sure, yeah.
Interesting choices, because it's kind of names, Ewan McGregor, he'd mainly done more adult films, Train Spotting.
I don't believe that he'd been in one that was a lot of this kind of, family-friendly sort of kind of movie.
I don't think he had yet. No. And then Liam Neeson, who back then he hadn't done Taken and things like that.
Oh, no.
More of a character actor. I think he'd done things like Rob Roy by then.
He had, and of course he was Schindler in Schindler's List.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But not something that, kid appeal.
No, again, I can't think of him being in one that was a family movie or a kid film. Yeah, I mean, and obviously Natalie Portman, who was most known for Leon then. Yeah, I don't think she'd done a few other things, but I don't think she'd had such a...
But it's much like the first movie, whereas they haven't gone for stars, which I think helps it.
Yeah, I mean, from British perspective, of course, seeing Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor as sort of the leads, isn't a sort of who are these? Yeah. But I suppose from American perspective, probably so.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest name was probably Samuel L. Jackson.
Absolutely. For American audience, certainly. Yeah.
And he'd come from, Pulp Fiction was the big one before.
Obviously, working with Spike Lee and then making Pulp Fiction and being in a whole host of...
He's been in loads.
I mean, by that point, he probably... Because I think he's done probably over 200 movies, if that... Probably more. So, and even at that point, I think throughout the 90s, he'd worked solidly.
I mean, when this came out, I remembered him from Pulp Fiction. I shouldn't have seen it if I had.
Yeah,
but the other film was Loaded Weapon 1.
Yeah, which was before. That was before Pulp Fiction.
That was just before, National Lampoon.
That's not very good.
No, National Lampoon film with Emilio Estevez in the 90s wouldn't be.
Yes.
A few all right moments.
Yeah, I was not like, you can watch it.
Yeah.
But
one joke really stands out, but I'm not going to repeat on it. It's only a PG, but I'm still not going to repeat on it. But I think that helped all their careers.
Yeah, without question. I mean, set them up, I would have thought.
And I mean, it's just one of those that, I'll be honest, I remember it getting a lot of criticism, and I kind of forget that people did like it.
Yeah. And
a lot of people went back and watched it, and it was one of those you'd see that I've been 13 times and all this.
Oh, yeah. I forgot all about that. There was a lot of that, a lot of talk of how many times have people gone to see it, because I think that happened with the original one as well.
Yeah.
That was a whole thing of people seeing it over 100 times.
Yeah, I mean, there's the famous someone going up to Alec Guinness and telling him he'd seen it 100 times. He's like, why?
Why? Yeah, I haven't even seen it once.
But Star Wars is that big that Alec Guinness is great actor, and I only really knew him from Star Wars.
Well, at that point, I saw Star Wars when I was like 5. So
But that's what I think of when I see him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the first thing that comes to mind. I've got a whole bunch of others in my head that I could think of as well. But sure, the first thing will be him being Ben.
Yeah, but I kind of think with Ewan McGregor and Samuel L. Jackson, Natalie Portman, that isn't. I think of them as their whole...
Absolutely. Again, there's no criticism to her or the film, but I do often forget that she was in all three of them, because I don't think of her as that being what she does.
Have you heard the story about the director on the latest Thor movie, Love and Thunder.
Because I think of her being more in that.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's
being in Thor.
But I forget the director's name, but he's done some really good. He's done Jojo Rabbit and stuff.
Yeah. He's New Zealand.
Well, he was at the time going to do a Star Wars film, and he asked her whether she wanted to be in it, and she was like, "I've been in Star Wars."
I've done that.
He'd forgot.
It's weird. It's true. I understand that. I probably would have done the same. Like being like, "Oh yeah, let's get Natalie Portman to be in a Star Wars movie. She'll love that."
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. She's already done it.
Yeah. But I mean, this is it's a big thing. You've got it for 2 days.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to seeing it on the big screen again.
Yeah.
And I really hope I can get to it because I'm working and stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping, I reckon it will be more people a little bit younger than us who want to see it again.
I think so too. Yes.
But I really hope they bring the kids. And,
I think there'll be a bit of that.
Yeah.
Because we've had a bit of that with other films. So, adults bringing their children along to see it. Sometimes even for the first time. Like
I saw that with Superman when you showed that. There was a lot.
And Back to the Future. There was a guy who brought his son along to his favourite film. The dad's favourite film. And the son had never seen it.
Yeah.
And loved it. Thought it was really good.
But that's the way to see it. I mean, I'm not a parent, but I do remember if my dad especially would go on about how good a film was and put it on, I don't know, it's what my dad like. But if I think of it, if it had taken me to the cinema,
exactly,
it would have. Yeah. The only film that really got me with that was Halloween. I was far too young. I was like, what the hell? I'd always try to watch like Freddy Krueger, and he was like, no, you can watch this one. I like it.
That's interesting.
And,
Halloween's probably an easier watch, I'd say.
There's less violence, and it was probably he recorded it off TV, so it would have been cut.
Yeah, they would have been. Yeah.
So he knew what he wasn't.
Not too much really to cut.
And also, I think it was like, right, you want to watch a scary film? This is scary. Now shut up and go to bed. Oh, he can't sleep.
Sorry.
That's right.
That's funny. Good parenting.
Yeah. But I also think he just wanted to watch it himself.
Of course.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to? Well, I've seen Halloween far too many times. Yeah. I haven't seen that in a while, but probably should give that another look. I haven't seen Star Wars either, like the original ones, in a really long time. I always think about it. It's something that constantly comes back in my head, like probably at least once a week. You should watch an old Star Wars. You haven't seen one of them in a while, and then just don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those that I could watch them every week, but I watched them when I was a kid. Yeah, we got to remember it was different then. You had the films you had on video. Then what happened to be on TV. I watched them to death.
Yeah.
And then I saw them when they reissued them at the cinema. Yeah. And then like every time they've come out reissued physical media, I bought them.
Really?
So as in once on video, once on DVD, once on Blu-ray.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I've watched them then. Yeah. So they're probably due for a rewatch for me, but. There's other stuff, and that's the thing. But when they're on at the cinema, I will go.
Of course,
it's
it's a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like one of my favourite. I'll be honest. We should mention some of the other stuff coming up. Movies I really like, but don't watch a lot. Splash you're showing. Mm-hmm. I watched that just before lockdown. Weirdly enough, I tracked down because it's not easy to get hold of now with physical media. And I loved it, and now he's showing a big screen. I just can't wait to see it again.
You must have seen it before.
Oh yeah, loads as a kid, but I hadn't seen it for probably 10, 15 years.
Yeah. Because I haven't seen it in probably something like 15 years or something like that. And it was one that I remember quite fondly as a kid, but also getting kind of bored by it as a kid as well, just because I just thought it was too romantic.
Yeah, it's one of those that
it's very mushy.
I think it's better as an adult.
Yeah, exactly. So I think for a child, it's not really a kids movie.
It's not. No, it's probably.
I don't know. It's definitely a PG.
Yeah, I reckon it might be a 12 now though. I don't know, but
it was definitely a PG when we were kids.
Yeah,
but it's not really for kids.
No, and because it's got that nostalgia to the 50s and 60s. Yeah. It's aimed at adults.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so was the first Ghostbusters.
Absolutely, I agree completely. That's not for kids either. But I mean, a different animal altogether because it's more horror based, and so it's more sort of fun horror type stuff for adults. Yeah, where Splash is like romance, and that's mostly when you're. A young lad, not really that bothered about that.
But there's silly bits.
There are very much so. There's Eugene Levy, that's great. You've got John Candy, let's go see great Canadians.
Yeah. And he's got very, 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 very brief nudity that young boys in the 80s would have loved.
Exactly that, because that was another thing that you go, ooh, yes, Flash.
Yeah,
that's got some stuff in it that was a bit naughty.
Yeah, but it hadn't.
Exactly. Yeah. But when you're like 8.
Yeah. You got that and The Crow. I've never seen The Crow in the cinema.
Right, me neither.
That little bit too young. So I was at that age where some of my friends would have gone to see it and just got in, or so they claimed at the time.
Yeah.
But it was 94, wasn't it?
94, yeah.
So they might have done.
Possible. Especially just smaller cinemas probably wouldn't have bothered so much, I suppose.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know.
But that's one I'm very interested to see again. But especially, I'm a big Ernie Hudson fan.
He's in it. I remember seeing it. Do you know what? I think I've only seen it twice in my life. Yeah. And the first time I saw it, which was probably 2 years after it came out on video, loved it. Thought it was wonderful. And then saw it again, maybe 5. I'd say between 5 and 10 years later. So I think early in the 2000s. So I'm probably in my early 20s, and not being so keen on it. Okay. As much. Liked it, appreciated it, but I thought feeling a little bit like outdated now. But again, remember it very fondly. I remember people remembering it really fondly, and I know that it has a huge cult following, always has done. Yeah. So I'm very much happy that we're putting it on.
Yeah. Have you seen the uproar to the remake?
Again, this is interesting. Yeah. I try to avoid those kind of things, but here we are again. A whole nonsense about people complaining about a film they have no reason to be complaining about.
I think people forget. The Crow's 30 years old.
It is.
And if in the 90s they were remaking a film from the 60s, people would be like, oh, fair dues, that's old, that's probably due of a remake. Now, and I think it is because we watch films more over and over again, they're easier to access.
Sure, absolutely.
That they're still fresher to us. So therefore, we almost cherish them more.
People become seemingly, maybe this is something that happened in the past, maybe, but seemingly now, people are obsessed with films that they feel matter to them, to the extent that it's become almost sacrosanct, like it's holy or something. It's stuff sacrilegious to touch this kind of stuff. It is just a film, and it is just your opinion, which you're completely entitled to and must maintain, but it is just yours. Yeah. Right. It's not something that has to go beyond that.
Yeah. And I stand by. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've been very disappointed with quite a few remakes.
Me too.
But kids don't want, or younger people want their own thing. They want, and sometimes rebooting these things is the way to get them to do it.
The argument against that, though, which I completely am fine with that argument, works for me, but a lot of people who have the other opinion are that that's fine, but create
something new. I get that.
New. Don't use an already existing franchise.
Yeah, but it's harder to get people through the door for something. I mean, how many attempts have there been for new franchises in recent years where they've planned loads of movies and there's been one? There's been quite a few. Mortal Instruments is one I can think of. A lot of them based on books and stuff, but they plan these.
I think the idea of planning stuff like that is a new phenomenon, and I don't think they should be doing it. I just think it's probably a bad idea, a bad business model. Put
a film out there where you could possibly do more.
Absolutely.
And then a good example of that from sort of 20 years ago was the British horror Underworld. I mean, they put that out. I don't expect they expected anything from it, and they've done 4 sequels, all of which were fairly successful. And that's how a franchise works. And going back to Phantom Menace, I mean, hopefully we'll. I do want to do an episode on Splash. So I'm glad we didn't talk about that too much. I don't think he'd planned. He says he done these 3 movies properly before. I think when A New Hope came out, when it said episode 4, it was meant to look like an old space opera, and they just put the random number up. That's my theory on it, which I'm sure he has said and then backtracked on.
I might be wrong in thinking this, but I don't even think it had a chapter name originally. When it originally came out.
I think it did.
Did it?
I think it did.
I don't know. I've got something in my head saying that when it originally came out in 77, and I think they changed it really quickly. They put it like
okay.
Like originally.
So the versions we'd have seen would have always had
always.
it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
But when it first came out, I think it might have not been called A New Hope.
Okay.
It was just called Star Wars.
Yeah.
Right?
So, but that kind of backs up what I was saying, that they've added that as an afterthought.
Yeah. I'm 90% sure that's right.
It could be that it was so successful that then he thought, I'll go and do the prequels.
Yeah.
Because the New Hope could be a standalone film anyway.
I mean, my understanding of the original Star Wars, from stuff I've read about it, was it changed so much. Like story before the film's even being made, just working on it, it's changed so much. Lots of people have looked at it, have read it, and gone, that's no good. You should change this. You should put that. You should emphasize this more. Lots of different Lots of people. He went to a lot. It wasn't like he came up with he had a story which he just maintained with himself, and then worked on it. Rewrote it, and then went, right. That's it. I'm done. This is what we're making. It was apparently lots of people involved in looking over it and editing it and doing lots of with the script. So to say that he knew always what it was going to be, that doesn't really line up with the historic facts.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's lots of stories about like Spielberg and Francis Ford Coppola and people like that. Yeah. Being behind the scenes because they're all friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, these are the kind of people I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And others, many others.
Yeah.
People looking at it and talking about it, going over it and stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, after the initial trilogy, he had. And I do believe that he did work on these prequels for a long time. It wasn't just. I don't think really it was a cash-in because he'd have done it years before. I think, and the fact he directed them all himself, it was a passive. And I think it took a lot out of him.
Absolutely.
Hence, he's not directed since.
I don't believe he has.
He's produced quite a few things again.
That's always been his thing, I think.
Yeah,
more
writing
so than
producing.
Producing, coming up with stories, working on stories, then producing them.
But I mean, he'd done it. And looking back, the fact that it's getting the reissue after 25 years is great. Do you know if they're planning to re-release all of them?
I'm sure if this one does well, which I can't see why it won't overall, sure it'll do well enough. Yeah. But they will. They'll release, it's 3 years for each, isn't it? The same with the original trilogy. And is that the same with the trilogy that came out recently as well? Was it one every 3 years?
3 or 2. It might have been 2 years for this one. I'm not sure though. But I think with the last trilogy's been done a few years now, and there's been a lot of Star Wars TV, which I've tried to get into, and it's good. Yeah. But I it's to me
Mandalorian, I watched that.
Which is cool, and we mentioned that on the last episode with Carl Weathers. Yeah. But for me, Star Wars is cinema.
Yeah.
And hopefully this will get everyone in the mood for another big Star Wars movie, because that kind of filtered with Solo and things.
So we've had We've had the Han Solo film standalone. There was Rogue One, which was really good, I thought.
Yeah.
Have there been any others?
No, then there was the trilogy, wasn't there? The three.
Yeah, the three. Yeah.
So I think there was 5.
So 2 standalone ones, even though the Rogue One kind of does fit in.
Rogue One's like a prequel to New Hope in a way.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So there is talk of there's several different things that could happen movie-wise with Star Wars, and I really want another Star Wars film, midnight show when it comes out or something. Get in the mood. I'll be dressed normally, but everyone else is dressed as stormtroopers and shit. That'll be good.
Or Wookiees.
Yeah, Wookiees are Wookiees. I love being at Comic-Con. There's a big old Wookiee trying to get my attention. Oh, hello, Wookiee. Can I have a photo? I'm not giving you money, but I'll have a photo. Thanks. Wookiees don't need money.
No. Oh,
Solo does. You help him get the money.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm waffling. But
did Chewie not like cash?
I don't know.
Probably not.
No, he's too busy just being cool. Chewie's brilliant.
He was good, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And he was in all of them.
Was he in
all of them? Oh, maybe not all of them. He was definitely, because he was in the prequels, wasn't he?
Briefly. I don't know if he's in this one.
No, I don't. You're right. I don't think he's in this one. R2-D2
Yeah.
R2-D2 is in all of them.
Yeah, R2-D2 is the character who's been in
the most.
Everyone. I'm not sure if he was in there. Whoa, I'm losing my word.
Oh.
I'm not sure if he's in there. What's happened?
There we go, we're back.
We've had a technical issue with recording equipment.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he was in Solo and Rogue One.
No, maybe not. But
in the Skywalker saga, as it's now called,
absolutely.
he's in all of them. Yeah.
So yeah, so he appears in the recent ones as well, doesn't
Yeah,
he? Because
yeah.
he's at the end of what was it? I forget what they're called. Because is there Rises? Is that one of them?
Oh, I forget. It's
Is it Awakens?
Force Awakens,
Force Awakens.
Last Jedi,
Last
Rise of Skywalker.
Rise. That's it.
I get them in the order
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
Um,
So he and R2D2's in all of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So see where the story all started
Yeah.
on the 3rd and 4th of May
That's right.
at King Street Cinema.
May the 4th be with you.
That's good.
I just got that.
You did.
I just.
Okay, well, we'll be back talking about another film soon.
Yeah.
I'm going to play, I don't know, a trailer.
Yeah, go on.
For, should we do the trailer for Splash?
Yeah, go on. It's a good
Yeah, trailer for Splash. Thank you very much.
Alan Bauer has a very successful business.
Okay, Bauer, you're ruined. You're finished. You're a ghost in this business.
How'd you like some bananas and corn?
Deal.
He's got the wisdom and support of his brother Freddie.
I love this guy. Do you hear me? I love him. He's looking at you too big. Come here. I just want to meet a woman. I want to meet a woman and I want to fall in love.
And worst of all, Alan Bauer feels with all his heart that he doesn't have one.
Freddie, something in here is not working. There are worse organs not to be working. Where to? In God, Massachusetts.
And then, one day, accidentally, from out of the blue, it happens. Just looking at her is pure ecstasy. Just touching her is a lifelong fantasy come true. Just being in love with her plunges him into a wondrous world of rapture and enchantment. Just one problem stands in his way. A little secret she's trying to keep all to herself.
There is a mermaid in New York City. How come she's got legs? She has legs out of the water. She has fins in the water. What about a woman showing up naked in a public place, Freddie? Well, I'm bored, of course. Can I come in?
No!
All right, let me in.
I'll be right there. I'm just changing.
That girl is a mermaid. All my life, I've been waiting for someone, and when I find her, she's a fish. Nobody said love's perfect. She's really hungry.
Daryl Hannah, Tom Hanks, and John Candy. Splash, a fantastic tale about a fantastic tale.